On July 27, 1953, the Korean War, one of the shortest yet most brutal and devastating conflicts in modern Asian history, officially came to an end after 35 fierce battles. More than 3 million lives were lost in this war. The armistice agreement was signed between North Korea and the United States, bringing an end to the fighting but failing to establish a true and lasting peace. As a result, the Korean Peninsula was permanently divided into two nations: North Korea, backed by China, and South Korea, supported by the United States. Since then, North Korea, a small and economically impoverished nation, has maintained a deeply hostile stance against the U.S., positioning itself as Washington's primary adversary. Yet, despite being the world's leading military superpower, the United States has never initiated a direct military confrontation with North Korea. So what has held back the world's most dominant force from engaging this small yet defiant nation? What barriers have prevented America from launching a military operation against North Korea? This video will uncover the shocking and often overlooked reasons behind this geopolitical paradox. 1. A nation always ready for war. From a geopolitical perspective, the Korean conflict has always been seen primarily as an internal struggle between the North and the South. While the U.S. maintains its commitment to protecting Seoul, any direct intervention beyond deterrence would be perceived as unnecessary interference. This strategic restraint has been a key factor in preventing open war between the U.S. and North Korea. With the collapse of the Soviet Union, North Korea found itself isolated in its long-standing confrontation with the U.S. and its allies. Unlike Germany, which experienced reunification after the Cold War, Pyongyang was determined to ensure that its regime would never meet a similar fate. In doing so, North Korea has continuously sent a clear message to the world. Any military intervention against it will come at an unbearable cost. This is why North Korea has maintained a perpetual wartime posture. Nuclear tests, missile launches, and military provocations are not just random acts of defiance. They are carefully calculated measures to force its adversaries into crisis management mode, ensuring that no one dares push the situation into full-blown war. Initially, many analysts believed that North Korea's nuclear program was merely a bargaining chip to extract concessions from the U.S. However, as years passed, and as Pyongyang repeatedly escalated tensions, it became evident that these weapons were not just for show, but a critical pillar of its survival strategy. North Korea's deterrence plan is clear. If the U.S. ever launches an invasion, Pyongyang will retaliate immediately with missile strikes on key U.S. military bases in South Korea, Japan, and even Guam. If that is not enough, it has openly threatened to target major American cities, forcing Washington into a strategic retreat. 2. A history of fear and lessons from the past. The long-standing animosity between the U.S. and North Korea has only reinforced Pyongyang's belief that nuclear weapons are its ultimate insurance policy. North Korean leaders frequently cite the fates of Saddam Hussein in Iraq and Muammar Gaddafi in Libya as cautionary tales. Both leaders relinquished their weapons of mass destruction under international pressure, only to be overthrown and killed in subsequent U.S.-led interventions. North Korea is determined never to suffer the same fate. If Hussein or Gaddafi had possessed nuclear weapons, it is highly unlikely that the U.S. would have dared to invade their countries. Pyongyang sees this as a historical truth, and so far, it has proven to be correct. This is why North Korea has remained intact despite decades of economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and international condemnation. Pyongyang has mastered the art of surviving under pressure, developing its own domestic arms industry despite severe restrictions on trade. 3. A military power not to be underestimated. One of the clearest demonstrations of North Korea's military capabilities came in July 2017, when Pyongyang announced the successful test of its first intercontinental ballistic missile, ICBM, capable of reaching a range of 13,000 kilometers, 8,100 miles. This meant that for the first time, North Korea had the potential to strike the U.S. mainland, including Washington, D.C. But this was only the beginning of a growing nightmare. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, North Korea is believed to possess over 80 nuclear warheads. It has also successfully tested missile systems capable of carrying nuclear payloads that could strike American soil. Beyond long-range capabilities, North Korea also has an arsenal of short- and medium-range ballistic missiles, posing a direct threat to regional allies such as Japan. With tens of thousands of U.S. troops stationed in Japan, the the country has remained on high alert, especially given that North Korea has previously test-fired missiles over Japanese territory. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has repeatedly claimed that these tests have solidified the country's strategic weapons capabilities, including ICBMs, thermonuclear bombs, and tactical nuclear warheads. For world powers, this is a nightmare scenario they desperately want to avoid. 4. Economic survival and sanctions resistance. Even if the US did decide to attack, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Pentagon estimates that in the first 90 days of war, casualties could exceed 1 million. If nuclear weapons were used, that number could triple. Despite decades of sanctions imposed by the United Nations and Western countries, North Korea has managed to maintain an independent economy. While economic hardship is evident, Pyongyang has proven that it can endure extreme conditions. Unlike Iran, which engaged in nuclear negotiations to ease sanctions, North Korea has demonstrated a far greater level of resilience, surviving natural disasters, famine, and economic isolation without ever capitulating. While many sanctioned countries rely on foreign technology or imported expertise, North Korea has developed its weapon systems entirely through domestic efforts. This means that even if its nuclear facilities were destroyed, the knowledge and technological expertise remain intact. Cyber attacks and intelligence operations might slow its progress, but they cannot eliminate North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Additionally, North Korea has continued to conduct lucrative arms deals. In 2017, Pyongyang reportedly sold air defense systems worth $6 million to Mozambique and guided missiles to Sudan. These transactions are just the tip of the iceberg. The full extent of North Korea's shadow economy remains a mystery. Even if the US decided to launch a military campaign against North Korea, the consequences would be catastrophic. The Pentagon estimates that within the first 90 days of conflict, casualties could exceed 1 million people. But this number could double, or even triple, if nuclear weapons were used. Seoul, a metropolitan area with over 50 million residents, is just 40 kilometers from the North Korean border. If war broke out, the South Korean capital would be devastated in the first few hours of combat. Meanwhile, Pyongyang could target American cities with nuclear strikes, potentially wiping out millions of lives in mere seconds. A single 250-kiloton nuclear detonation over Los Angeles would obliterate the city, leaving more than 1.2 million casualties, surpassing US losses in World War II. Hospitals would be overwhelmed, radiation exposure would cripple survivors, and America would enter a dark chapter in its history, unlike anything it has ever experienced before. Beyond the immediate destruction, Washington would also have to consider China's response. Beijing remains North Korea's closest ally, bound by a 1961 mutual defense treaty. Although China has expressed concerns over North Korea's nuclear ambitions, it has repeatedly warned the US against provoking conflict. Any miscalculation could escalate into a regional or even global war. Ultimately, the consequences of attacking North Korea are too dire for even the most powerful nation to ignore. This is why, despite decades of hostility, the US has refrained from military intervention. Some lines, even for Washington, are simply too dangerous to cross. As a result, North Korea continues to exist as a defiant force on the global stage, an isolated yet formidable adversary that no one dares to challenge directly. But what do you think? Are there deeper hidden reasons why the US has never launched an attack on North Korea? If you enjoyed this video, take a second to hit the like button, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next exciting videos.